There are a lot of things in today's society that's just not like how it used to be. Once upon a time, you didn't have to worry about walking down your neighborhood and thinking that someone was going to kidnap you. You didn't have that fear that something bad was going to happen, that you couldn't trust a stranger across the street, that their smile was just a smile, and there was no ulterior motive. You didn't have to worry about people who came along in a group with you and fear for your own safety. But that's not the case with today. Today, you have to be that much more careful and that much more aware. Number 3. So this happened when I was about 12 years old. I was visiting my 2 nephews for the day and was sleeping over. I was told by their mother that my older nephew, let's call him Ben, would have a few of his older friends over to film a movie for their drama class. They were 16-year-olds. This will be important later. My younger nephew and I were allowed to stand by, but we had to stay with the cameraman. He was a tall, slender guy with no expression on his face. He looks a lot like Sheldon Cooper from Big Bang Theory. Anyway, my younger nephew drifted off after a while and went to bed. He left me alone with this creep. The guy started talking to me after a while and asked personal questions like my name, my age, etc. He later on told me that he was abused as a kid. But what bothered me was that he never once changed his tone and had the same facial expression the whole night. It was now around 10 p.m. and I was getting tired. I decided to go to bed. I changed, put my phone on the charger next to me, and tried to sleep. I had a feeling the whole night that someone was watching me. I could feel his eyes staring at me. I was scared. I had my back to him and didn't know what to do. The creep was staring right at me. After about 10 minutes, I turned around to see him. For the first time that night, he was smiling. I pretended to be sleepy and confused and asked him what he was doing. He replied with, "Is that your phone?" pointing at my phone next to me. "Yes, why?" I replied. "How much storage space does it have?" "I have no idea," I replied, wondering why he asked. "Okay, I want to ask you a question, and I need you to answer truthfully, understand?" He said this with a low voice. "Yes," I said, too scared to say anything else. "I want your number." I was too scared to say no, since he could have hurt me if I did so. I gave it to him. He then walked away and the room fell silent. I couldn't sleep and my older nephew noticed this. He came up to me and asked if I was okay. I told him about the guy, and what he said scared me even more. "He is a psychopath. You better block him if he calls you. He isn't even my friend. I had to invite him because I had no other choice." He did later on text me and tried to ask me more questions, but I blocked him. Number 2. This happened a few days ago. I live in Lithuania. It's a small country, but I like it. Well, not my city anymore. I'm a 20-year-old guy, average build, staying in one of the more dangerous neighborhoods in my city, so crime is not a surprise here. But you know that feeling that it won't happen to you? Well, I don't have that feeling anymore. Alright. So it was the middle of the night, it was dark and the lights didn't work. I'm just walking down my neighborhood because I got in a fight with my family. I'm smoking my cigarette away and some homeless guy yells at me and said, "Hey, do you have a cig? I really need one," in a scruffy voice. The way he said it and smiled sent shivers down my back. The unwashed face, almost no teeth. I knew something would go wrong. Why? First, I smoked my last cigarette. Second, I was about 4 kilometers away from my home and my legs were hurting. And third, there was no one around. So I said, "Sorry, this is the last one." His face went blank. Then to anger more and more, and he started shouting at me that he would slice me like a pig and pull out a rusty old knife. I was unarmed. I knew how to defend myself because growing up I had a lot of fights, but not from a knife. So I start running like hell. My lungs are burning from the cigarette and he's gaining on me. He was homeless, but he could run really fast. I fucking tripped on a flat surface. What the fuck? I scraped my knee real bad because blood came running down almost instantly. He came up to me and smiled with the most evil smile I have ever seen. I thought I was done for. And he said, "Oh, the little piggy fell down, so what now?" He put the knife near my throat, and as he's about to slice me, a voice screamed, "Hey, what are you doing?" The homeless guy bolted to the dark woods that were near us. Some guy was jogging and somehow he saw us and went to check it out. He saved me. I'm so grateful that he showed up. He helped me to get home and left. When I got home, I cleaned up the wound. It was deep, but I didn't care that much about it because I almost died. And who knows what else the homeless guy had in mind. The moral of this story? Always have a spare cigarette. Or don't walk alone at night. Number 1. I've had many weird experiences and encounters in my life. I read these stories all the time from brave people who shared, so I decided to share one of mine. So, here goes. I grew up in an affluent neighborhood about 45 minutes away from a major city in the US. My neighborhood was a total bedroom community around 4,000 people, which means virtually no crime aside from stupid rich tard kids driving around hitting mailboxes with a baseball bat. I had much more sense early on because both of my parents worked hard and taught me the value of doing the same along with other virtues like respect and just generally not being a total clown shoes asshole to people. Anyway, for reference, this event happened when I was 12 in the late 90s. I'm a girl, and though I've since grown about 4 inches, I was about 5'2", and probably barely 100 pounds. I've always been very athletic, playing multiple sports from the time I was even mildly conscious because I had a good number of high-level athletes in my family, including my dad. My mom is from a major city and taught me the value of awareness of my surroundings early. All this will make sense in a moment. She always told me to have my keys to our house out and in my hand as soon as I got off the school bus to walk down my street home, though I never knew why. I'm so glad she stressed this because I'm pretty certain it saved my life. So, one day, I say bye to my friends and hop off the bus to take the short walk down to my house. My street curves in a half circle, which makes it difficult to see around the curve. So basically, you can only see a bit in front and behind as you walk. It's the least creepy street ever, neighbors all around with a comfortable distance between houses. As I'm mindlessly walking around my curving street, I get a funny feeling that makes me turn and look behind me just as the crossing street is going out of my view. I see a man walking down the street that mine makes a T shape with, the one I was dropped off on. Weird, I think, as I've never seen him before, and not to say we knew everyone, but what struck me was that he wasn't really dressed like people did around there. He was dressed in fine jeans and a polo, both of which were way too big. I shrugged and kept walking, but something was really bothering me about this guy. I was about to walk by my next-door neighbor's house, still pondering what was making me feel so scared, when I looked back again. I figured I'd have to walk out into the street a bit to see where he went, but no. I had walked a fair distance, but this guy was suddenly no more than 10 feet from me. You always think in situations like this you'd scream or something, but my breath caught in my throat. I couldn't fathom how he'd gotten so close that fast, and his wide-eyed, hyper-focused stare threw daggers into my stomach. I knew I was in big trouble. Not wanting to find out what the fuck he wanted, who he was, or why he was gaining on me, I went directly into flight mode, knowing my house was about 100 yards away. I noped hard. I took off running across my driveway and realized he was running after me because I heard his feet on the asphalt, then on my driveway. I know he was close because I ran track, but I didn't waste time looking back. Realizing my backpack, which probably weighed half of what I did, was slowing me down, I threw my arms back, holding my keys in a death grip. I knew I could outrun him if I weren't so heavy and my backpack slipped off. I was able to gain distance on him, and I don't know if it was panic or adrenaline, whatever, but my front door keyhole became huge in my eyesight, and I jammed my key and got inside. I slammed my big-ass oak door so hard that it recoiled, and half thinking about what could happen if he got into my empty house, I slammed it closed and locked it. I stood there for a second, just wide-eyed and confused, until I realized I should look out of the peephole. When I did, it was pitch black. More confusion. It was 3 p.m. I stood looking and starting to shake uncontrollably, and that's when I saw why it was black. Light started coming through as I saw this fucking creep's eye, and then him backing away from my door, having tried to look in. He was that close to me. He stood there for a moment, eyeballing my door and house, probably looking for another way in. Then he started turning around on my porch to face the street, cursing under his breath. I could see him mouthing it, but couldn't hear partially. I'm sure because I was in total shock. Then he raises the creep factor to new heights. He skip walks off my porch, across my giant lawn to the street in the same direction we had been running, and raises his hand in the air. From behind my very tall pine trees on the right side from my vantage point, I see a white, windowless van pull up in front, and he hops in. I can't see the driver because of the tinted windows in front, but they sat there, and I swear I could feel them looking at my door, maybe figuring out what to do next. God, I'm shaking just talking about this right now. They drove off, and I slumped to the floor, shaking and freaking out so hard I legitimately had to crawl to my kitchen. I hid and called my mom, who, despite working all the way downtown in the city, made the 45-minute drive home in 15. She drove around ready to pull their spines out because although she's the kindest person I've ever known, she will kick your ass, or worse if you mess with me. We called the cops and I gave my statement, but they never found those freaks. So, creepy bait and switch kidnappers, let's not ever meet.